very much, and good morning and welcome to all of our Chamber Initiative members and the wider business community guests as well today. It's a real pleasure, as always, to welcome you to today's initiative meeting. As always, we've got a packed agenda, but today it's Super Thursday, so of course I hope everybody's going out and casting their votes and using their opportunity to share their voice. Of course, we have the West of England mayoral election, as well as the Bristol City Mayor, and importantly, the Police and Crime Commissioner as well, and of course, lots of other councillors involved in their elections. So there's a lot for us to work through in the coming days and weeks, and we really do look forward to welcoming all of the new candidates into their roles, and we're very keen to start to work with those elected officers. Quickly, we've been very clear in setting out our priorities through our various business manifestos, and there's a lot for us to work on going forwards. We're also, of course, always very keen to ensure that we're working with our members and the business community more widely, understanding our needs and helping to shape the solutions across the city region that respond to those. And for those of you who contribute to our quarterly economic survey, some 550 organisations have, we would like to say a big thank you. It's really important to us that we have a really clear understanding of the economics of the region. And I think this time around, looking at the data, it felt to us a real sense of mixed sentiment. Over 40% of businesses reported that their cash positions and their general financial indebtedness had deteriorated over the course of the last 12 months, and of course that's the advantages of the pandemic. And we are conscious and concerned about the likely financial bubble that starts to create, particularly for smaller businesses. And we as a chamber are on hand to help to support businesses as they need to think about what they need to do to come out of and through the pandemic. But also we saw that there's a lot of positive business sentiment, and I think that's really starting to come forwards as we see the vaccine program rolling out really successfully. And it's really, really heartening to see that the COVID cases are very, very low now in our region. And I think that gives us all great cause for optimism. So without further ado, I'm going to move the agenda on, but just to say that today we've got a very much agenda focus around diversity and inclusion. We know that actually creating the right environment for people to be able to come to work and to be the very best of who they can be, and to bring diversity into our organisations creates generally the very best opportunity for us to be successful. And our speakers are all going to talk to that agenda. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Victoria. She'll give us a bit of an update from an initiative. So Victoria, to you, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Richard, and good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. As Richard said, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers today. So our predominant theme is, of course, focusing on leadership, diversity and inclusion, not just for us to look at as a responsible business community, but of course for the city region as well. So just to kick things off, we'd like to welcome our newest members. So welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us. We've got Empire Fighting Chance, a fantastic boxing charity based in Easton. We've got Geiston, I can see Emily on the call, who are a tech business in Bristol, so thank you for joining us. And finally, the West of England Institute of Technology as well. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for getting involved. We're looking forward to working with you. Next slide, please, Mark. So just a very brief update from myself and Nina in the team. As Richard said, it would be remiss not to say it's D-Day, isn't it, here in the West of England? It's a very political day. And of course, as the main business leadership group for the West of England, we will of course be offering our full support to the successful candidates, whoever they are, regardless of party. So we'll be working on behalf of our members, committed to actively working with those decision makers to tackle our collective challenges. So we've set those out in our business manifestos. So we're looking forward to working in partnership with successful candidates moving forwards. And of course, alongside politics, our main focus, of course, as ever, remains on supporting businesses across the region. So particularly those who are still struggling with the effects of the pandemic, So we're committed to supporting different businesses and the various sectors, not just in Bristol, but across the west of England as well. So of course, we're working on this with our quarterly economic survey, and we're leading on the economic recovery work as well. So it's not all doom and gloom, as Richard said. We are seeing some positive growth across the city, particularly in certain sectors. And there are many businesses that are beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So of course, though, there are still challenges. So we're continuing to work with those sectors that are adversely affected, but we are starting to see green shoots of recovery. You know, we're starting to see Visit West is now been formally announced. So the forming of Visit Bath and Destination Bristol to, you know, form an economic powerhouse essentially for our tourism. We're looking at sort of the various cranes across the city. We're looking at the city centre revitalisation. So things are starting to get back to normal and get back to sort of pre-pandemic. And then just the final slide, if that's all right, Mark. Moving forward, we are looking to obviously continue our monthly meetings. We think they're working well, but of course, we're always very open to feedback. So we'll be continuing these on Zoom every month. However, big news, we have penciled in the 9th of September for our first face-to-face meeting, all being well. So we provisionally booked Ashton Gate Stadium and a special guest speaker. You can guess who that is. We're keeping that under wraps for now. So hopefully, we are aiming to see each other in September, all being well. But as I say, feedback is always appreciated. If you do have any thoughts on what we could be doing better, or what you would like to see from us as a business community, then please do get in touch. So I'm going to pass over now to my colleague Nina, who's going to give you a very quick update on our climate change work in Business West and her new role. So thank you again.
Thank you, Victoria. So I'm just going to give everyone a bit of an overview of our sort of journey to net zero. I think this journey to net zero has certainly been part of what we deemed as that economic recovery. And we certainly at Business West see that this is a really big opportunity for the region to recover and recover better from the pandemic. So I'm just going to give you an overview of what we're doing internally. So I'm really pleased to tell you, but on the quiet, because we haven't announced it yet, but Business West, we have become a B Corp. And any of you who've already been on this journey just recognise that this is a really big accolade. It really demonstrates that we're a purpose-driven organisation. And it acknowledges all of the sort of work that we do and along with our members to make the place the best place. And then looking at, and it sort of cements the work then that we've been doing on the sort of social side, but also on the environmental side. And what I'm really pleased to also share with you is that we have a carbon reduction action plan now that's been embedded within the business. This builds on 10 years plus of replacing light bulbs, putting in heating controls within our organisation and behaviour change with our staff. But we really think that we're going to be on track to get to net zero by 2030, and we're committed to do that using sort of science-based targets, and that will be soon shared with our members and published on our website. And as Victoria mentioned, I've been seconded to work right across the company now on our climate strategy, and I'm really pleased to say that by next month I'll have a project manager joining me to make sure that right across the business and working with our members and working across the region that we're able to accelerate that progress towards net zero. Next slide. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about some of the work that we're already doing with our members. So we have the economic survey, which Richard mentioned earlier. So our next one, which will be going out on the 18th of May, we've added some climate action questions to that. We recognise that there are 50 shades of green, and we want to understand where on that spectrum our members lie so that we can best represent them and best support them on that journey. So in that questionnaire, we will be finding out what level of importance companies are placing on reaching net zero and the climate. What are their main barriers? What do they see as their opportunities, and how they think that they might, what support they might need in order to get to that target. We've also created a Trading to Net Zero hub, and I'll add all of these links to the chat after I finish talking. But this is very much in its sort of beta stage at this stage. But what we've done is corral all of the resources that we have available. We also have a blog that's becoming more and more active as well, sharing stories of best practice and some provocations and things that you might need to be starting to think about as you start to address climate change within your organisation. And also it signposts to all the available resources and support that's available. And given that we're here in Bristol, I really want to sort of highlight that our partner, Bristol Green Capital Partnership, they've launched their Climate Action Programme, which is sponsored by the council, as well as COP26 sponsor NatWest. And this involves a Climate Leaders Programme. This is a club for all of those companies already on that journey to net zero. And it offers sort of peer-to-peer support to help them on their way. And it has a wider programme as well to help any company to begin that journey on net zero. So there's piles of resources, workshops, breakfast meetings. So I urge you to take a look and sign up to the Green Capital Partnership to hear more about that. The other thing as well is that we're going to be sort of backing various campaigns to drive behaviour change. Some of them are, require very little investment. There's one that's happening at the moment called No Mow May. It's encouraging you not to mow the lawns at your offices to make sure that there's create habitats for insects. But also we'll be launching another one ahead of the CAS coming into Bristol, looking at how do we help companies to accelerate that transition to electric vehicles as well. So there'll be more coming in your newsletters and on all of our social media feeds soon on that. And can I have the next slide? And of course, it's important. We can't just do this as a city or just as our own individual businesses. We need to work as a region and as a country and as an international community. So we've set up a climate advisory group. We're not experts on climate change, but what we want to do is just draw in those experts across the city to help us understand some of those technical issues about how do we get to net zero. And I'm really pleased to say that David Mellor, our vice president, chairs that group for us. We're also working with all of the other chambers across the country now as well, so that we are able to act and respond to national policy. I think that's a really good move because, again, this does take, we need to have national policy to help us on this journey. And of course, we've got the G7 in Cornwall and COP26 later on in the year. So we will be taking part in some of those fringe events and creating our own engagement programme, which we will be sharing with you in due course. We continue to lobby for greater investment into net zero solutions, and two of the campaigns that we have at the moment is the Bristol Cycling Works, that's calling for greater investment into cycle infrastructure that allows continuous and segregated cycling right across the city region, so that more people feel safer to leave the car and try a bike to get into work. And also we've co-signed a letter as well asking for the new Metro Mayor then to support green jobs in the region. We're also working with various sectors. Obviously, as the Chamber of Commerce and the initiative, we see that every single sector needs to go on this journey. So we've been working with the aerospace companies on their efforts to support the national sort of Jet Zero efforts to decarbonise aviation, and also working with the nuclear industry as well on how do we attract fission into the region. So that's all I'm going to share with you now, and I'll hand back over to Richard, but I'll add some links into that chat.
There we go. Click the wrong button. So thank you very much, Nina and Victoria. So I'm really delighted to move the agenda on and to introduce Chief Constable for Avon and Somerset Police, Andy Marsh. Andy, you and I met some time ago at the headquarters, and I was very, very impressed with the digital transformation that you've taken Avon and Somerset Police on. And I thought it'd be really interesting for our members to hear more about that and the work that you're doing around inclusion and diversity into the police force as well. So I think I'm going to hand the floor straight over to you, and then I have perhaps the opportunity to take some questions afterwards. So Andy, thank you. mute at the moment, I think. Still on mute.
How's that?
There we go. Perfect. Thank you, Andy.
And is my screen showing as a presentation?
Yeah, you're all on board. Perfect.
Okay. Right. So first of all, I'd like to thank Business West for the support that you've given me and the constabulary, particularly over the last year through COVID. And there've been some seminal moments. The disorder, the controversial toppling of the Colston statue and our response to it. And you as a group have been everything that any police chief or police force could ask for. So thank you. We couldn't do what we do without the support of our businesses and our communities. So I'm going to talk to you about our journey to be the most cultural, most inclusive police force in England and Wales. And I'd just like to explain the philosophy behind that. When I became chief, I needed to respond immediately to the murder of Bijan Ibrahimi. Although that happened in 2013, I met Bijan's sisters the first week that I took my post, and I promised to do everything in my power to stop that sort of thing happening again. Now, in order to tackle that obstacle or make that commitment, we had to harness data. 10 million pieces of data the force receives every day. We had to harness it to free the police officers and staff from the blizzard of risk, and they were terrified of making a mistake, and use that data to empower them. The same philosophy when I was chief in Hampshire, the first chief of a big force globally to issue body-worn video, really to give transparency to policing and to tackle this thing of citizen journalism. And actually, if I sat in front of you today and said we didn't have a trust issue with some sections of the community, I would be very disingenuous. And actually, one of the antidotes to mistrust is openness, transparency, inclusion, and legitimacy. So we have this vision to deliver outstanding policing for everyone. And if we're to do that, we need to be everyone's police force. There's some really hard business reasons why we need to be inclusive. So having spoke to you a little bit about the obstacle being the way, what I expect the 6,000 free brains that I'm lucky enough to work with is come up through looking externally and around the world at ingenious ways of making us the most inclusive police force in the world. And I'll be honest with you, and there's a message to all leaders here. When my team first came back to me and said, here's our inclusion plan, my response was, if we are to be the most inclusive, we need to spend as much time, care, attention, and maybe money on this as we do on digitalization, data, and technology. So go away and come back with something much more meaningful. Now, actually, you need the attention to detail, but you need the big ideas. And they came back with some big ideas. And the reason why we had these big ideas is we need to underpin our values: courageous, learning, caring, and inclusive. We need to be really serious. And cultural change is one of the most significant things that we will ever do. Now, recognizing that there isn't one initiative that will make us inclusive, these 5 big ideas augment a wider plan. I'll just briefly go through them. So we're the only, we opened ourselves up to the scrutiny of the National Equality Standard. We're the only police force that has achieved that standard in England and Wales. And to be fair, it doesn't mean that we've arrived at the destination. We've just got a whole load of best of field ideas that we need to do next. The next thing is we addressed the process of recruiting. We allowed the community into it. We asked them to help us, and we took that process apart and we made it much more friendly to help us make a representative workforce. I'll come back to this question of mobilizing the whole workforce. You won't achieve cultural change unless you get everyone in the organization behind it. So how do I, as a 55-year-old, obviously white man, mobilize a workforce that has got plenty of people that look like me and might see this as a threat? And I'll come back to that. It's probably the most important thing, and developing the concept of allyship is really important. Now, training is such an important issue, but you can't imagine that you do it once and then park it. You need to prepare the organization by messaging. You need to keep it going on an ongoing basis, and we're probably in about our 4th iteration now of tactical and operational and strategic training with partners in the community. We need to celebrate our success, and we need to evaluate and learn from what we've done before. So we keep that moving, we never finish it. And the last thing that we did is that they suggested, the team suggested, we recruit 2 people from outside to form the basis of an outreach team with some police officers. And I said, no, go away and recruit 8. And we got some brilliant people that are actually embedded in communities. And that is probably one of the best ways in which you build trust and confidence. Now, what are the outputs or outcomes? The jet pilot, Chuck Yeager, that passed the speed of sound, broke the sound barrier for the first time ever in mankind's history, was asked how he knew that he'd broken the sound barrier and what did it feel like. And he said, I read the dials that said I'd broken it and I felt it in the seat of my pants. And to be honest with you, that is how I fly the organization. So I like data, I read the dials, and you've got a screen that shows you the dials at the moment. But you also hear the anecdote and you get a feel for whether you're going in the right direction. Now, in policing, these staff survey results I'm sharing with you now, in my experience, are unprecedented anywhere that I've worked nationally or in the world. So since we changed our values to include inclusion as one of the 4 in 2018, our alignment with the staff survey, which is a civil service standard staff survey, has increased by 46% to 62. And you can see, if you've got great eyesight, the little dials on the right that show that alignment with inclusion. And we've gone from, I think it says 64% to 82%. So I know that these values are what the people in Avon and Somerset Constabulary want and need. And I've been pushing this in the right direction. And it won't be single things that change people's sentiment about inclusion, although single things like the process of recruitment are important. You have got to work with people on an emotional level. So I'm gonna finish by showing you a 2-minute video which talks about how did I buy in the workforce to support this. And we made a video which I showed at one of my annual roadshows 2 years ago, which actually I watched people watch it. We could do that then in the various theatres that I did my roadshow. And some people, including some older white men, wept because for the first time, someone was speaking to them and recognizing their difference. Inclusion has to mean something for everyone. So we got a lot of joy out of making this film. The other thing that it does, it challenges 4 reasons why things fail in policing. I'll tell you what those things are. First of all, there's a sense of them and us, between us and the public. The second is a cynicism of nothing works around here. The third is an exaggerated sense of mission, and which actually can override our sense of duty. So all of the video speaks to all of these things and actually addresses the people in the organization on an emotional level. So let's just watch this, and we'll happily take any questions. Did you see that okay?
Yeah, that came across really well. Thank you.
So one of the final things I'd say, because my time is up, actually all leaders need to be open about their own weaknesses. It is a way of asking for help. And I've been very open with my workforce about the experiences I've had, suffering and recovering from cancer, some of the setbacks in my life and my career. Actually, that is how people respond to real leaders. None of us are superheroes. And that's how you make an inclusive organization. So we're not there yet. This is a continuing journey, but one that I'm sure will be continued after I conclude as chief. Now I'm going to try and stop sharing now. Yes, here we go. I can do it there. Sorry, I'm not as familiar with Zoom as I am Teams. Right, back over to you. Thank you.
Andy, thank you so much for sharing the presentation and the video with us. I think there's a lot to chat about how moving that's been. Just before we go into Q&A, and I will take some questions early before I introduce our next speakers, can I just take the opportunity to say a huge thank you for being an exemplary leader across the city and leading the police force through such challenging times, particularly through the pandemic. We have seen the way that you and your officers have really responded carefully and considerately and equally to uphold the law across a whole series of issues. And I know that you're going to be retiring in the very near future. So I want to say on behalf of the business community, huge congratulations to you for the work that you've done. And I thank you for leading our police force so well. And we wish your successor well, and we'll be very happy and pleased to work with that person when we know who that is. But Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. A great honour to serve. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I will just open the floor up actually if there are any particular questions. I've got one actually, and then if anybody wants to just come in and put their hand up. But Andy, I could see how much that's helped to transform the workforce. But what have you seen as the benefits in the community? And you talked about trust in the community. Have you seen or any pointers to see the difference that you've made in the community at all?
So I honestly think that if we want our police officers and staff to care about the services they provide victims of crime, to work with integrity, then actually those values must start within the organisation. So I think you hold the mirror up, it reflects out. In terms of progress, I think the conversation has changed in the city. With policing being we deal with 4,000 calls a day at least. Actually, there are always going to be circumstances which I might be unhappy about. It's really important to take learning into that. I mean, one of the things that I didn't say is on the day that I launched the values in 2018, we didn't sack a member of police staff, a panel, for making a racist comment in the workplace. There is a harder edge about walking the talk. I gave my team, I was told I wasn't allowed to do it, but I said, you've got 8 hours now. This leader is not going to work for Avon and Somerset by the end of today. And so sometimes you have to be very visibly symbolic in saying, these are our standards, this is what's going to happen, and this isn't going to happen anymore. I was prepared to take the risk of that backfiring on me, and I lost, you read it in the paper, I lost a judicial review of something I was unhappy with only last week or this week. So I have seen the difference. But Richard, what I would say is that policing is one of those jobs that never ends. So but the greater tragedy is a mission that you don't start and the one you don't finish. So our aim is to hand the baton over to the next leader, the next generation of police officers that actually push it even further and do even better. But I do feel in terms of cultural change, we have got an unstoppable momentum. We've recruited so many new officers now that we're training with our brilliant University of the West of England, and with a much broader perception of what policing is all about and what the community want, need and expect, that I just think this will continue to improve, Richard.
Andy, thank you very much. And I suppose just a question from Kelly Thatcher, actually. She was saying, brilliant video, and have you thought about putting it onto TV, ITV, BBC News, or indeed YouTube? But actually, how is this message going out more publicly? And Andy, is there a role for us to play in that as well, actually? Oh, you're back on mute.
Yes, so we do put stuff out externally. It's gone out in our social media channels, and I had a big reaction to it on LinkedIn when I put it on my account. And genuinely, the people who have autism, people who haven't been able to speak about their faith or their sexuality, were very, very moved by watching that and realizing I am not alone within this organization. I can be myself. And so we have unleashed massive innovation, creativity and ownership and happiness in the workplace through it. I know we've got some media gurus, and Kalpner came to speak to us. We have so we have role models and leaders and thought provokers come in and do presentations to all and sundry in the workforce, which also stimulates this vision. I struggle with the cynicism of mainstream media at the moment, I'm afraid, Richard. There's something about wanting to spread stories of mistrusting institutions, rather than actually, we've got some brilliant people working in our public sector who are doing their best to help business flourish, help keep people happy, healthy and safe. I don't know whether it's a Trumpism moment we're going through, whether it's a response to hostile state bots that seek to undermine our establishments. One of the things I do know, Richard, is I lead for policing internationally for the UK. So I've led in the last 6 years missions one for 3 years in Pakistan, working with all the police chiefs in Pakistan, but in Afghanistan, India, Mexico, Africa. We have got something precious in our institutions, and I think I wish people would support them more broadly in a way that I know the West of England has supported Avon and Somerset Constabulary, but we don't get that necessarily in the media, nor in national politics.
I think that's perhaps something as a framework, as a network of chambers, we ought to think about that, and I'll take that back to the chamber network, because it's a very good point that you raise. The point around, go on, Andy.
Richard, look, you guys have been brilliant. I felt the warmth of your support. I think that for me, 21st century outstanding leadership is about influence. You have influence, and I urge you to use it to get the sort of police force, health service, local, I know Mike Jackson's on here, local council services that you want, need and deserve. So I know that we're about to elect a new police and crime commissioner, and a new chief will be selected. You guys need to cuckoo them to make sure they deliver your agenda, the Bristol agenda. That's that local people.
Brilliant. Andy, thank you very much for that. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move us on, but thank you very much for your session, taking the questions as well. So it's with real pleasure that I'm now going to introduce Poco Osei. Poco is a fellow Business West board member, but more importantly, Chief Executive of Babasa. And Poco, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. And that was truly moving as well, Andy. And I do have to commend your exceptional leadership and impact, not just within the police force, but Bristol as a whole. And it's somewhat sad to see you leave, but we do understand that at times these things happen. For Babasa, very similar to what Andy was saying, we equally believe that talent is evenly spread across communities, but at times there's opportunities that that isn't. And we very much believe in the power of community, similar to Andy. And actually, that's what Babasa means: ordinary people coming together to act as a support bridge for those in need. And our mission has stayed the same, which is to support more specifically young people from low income and ethnic minority backgrounds to pursue their professional ambitions. And that's a very, I guess, pertinent mission, particularly in the times that we are in. And I say that, taking into consideration that the real impact of Brexit, we're just about to feel it. The same with the aftershock of the pandemic. Of course, we're dealing with the psychosocial impact of the George Floyd incident. And I think Andy mentioned about how politics overall has been sensationalized and identity politics is taking roots. And all this, unfortunately, plays to the disadvantage of us all, but more disproportionately, young people, as I see it, from ethnic minority backgrounds. And so for us, really, the question for now and moving forward is and has been, how do we safeguard the next generation of low income and ethnic minorities in the city from sinking into even greater levels of poverty and deprivation? Or in other words, how do we unleash the talent within the city across all communities to help drive our economy into the future, into that to 21st century world-class city that we want to be. And in trying to quickly respond to that in terms of what we are doing about it, we have been working really closely with the city office since the pandemic hit in particular, and other key partners on a long-term goal in trying to break that cycle. What is it that we are doing specifically and quickly? One, we are setting up, we've always done an element of sort of placement program and sort of helping young people move into the workplace, take on entry-level roles and things of that nature. But we are stepping it up and setting up an independent entity, almost a subsidiary entity under Babasa, called the Babasa Recruitment and Inclusion Services. Based on our experiences and the learning, but we're looking at a scaled up version so that we can support the city with the workforce representation, and we can also support the city along, with the agenda around inclusion, how to make their workforce feel that sense of belonging at the workplace. So that we're doing that. I think it's going to be launched in a couple of months' time. The other thing that we're trying to do with the city office and key partners is beginning to look at, actually, you have Stonewall, for example, the LGBT index, which is more of a standard. But when you look at race and ethnicity, there isn't really a strong workplace inclusion index. So the question is, if Bristol has always taken the lead, then how can we take the lead in developing something for the city first and foremost, but hopefully something that can be scaled across other core cities. And the third thing, which is the last thing that we are looking at, is that if we really and truly want to break the cycle of deprivation, then the big question is, how are we going to, Andy talked about data and measuring stuff. How what do we have in place from a framework point of view to try and understand how we're doing in terms of social mobility, and also how we're doing in terms of inequality in the city. Something more that looks like a longitudinal research piece that we can do with City Office and hopefully the two universities that helps with that, but also aligns with the SDGs and the Gini index, right? Sort of the worldwide equality index. So Bristol, hopefully what we are trying to push for now, and over and above directly helping young people, is also to look at some of the systemic change that we could be looking at as a city, to really try and shift the levels of deprivation in the city around. So those are the sort of three key things that we are doing. In terms of how you may want to get involved, and very quickly, maybe if I put it this way, if you are looking to diversify your workforce, we've recruited two key individuals, one being Izzy Frank. Some of you may know, because she was with Channel 4, she was their creative diversity executive, so some of you may know her. And Holly, who comes from a recruitment background. You're just onboarding, so give them a few weeks. And if you are honestly thinking about diversifying your workforce, looking at business support entry-level roles, please don't hesitate to engage with us. You can still engage with us now, but I'm just, I guess, managing expectations in terms of the new people onboarding. The second thing is that if you are thinking about how do you enhance the sense of belonging at your workplace, equally don't hesitate at all. We're working with some incredible associates and staff members to help businesses transform their workplace. And last but not the least, if you are thinking about how do you develop the levels of sort of cross-cultural competency within your workforce, so this is more on the training bit that Andy said that is equally important, then again, please do get in touch. Over the last 2 years, we have been working really carefully with a range of EDI specialists and the university as well, to make sure that we have a program that is human-centered. It's not about what does your impact assessment say and all those sorts of more compliance-based stuff, but how do you really bring about true transformation from a people's point of view. So if you're thinking about any of those three questions, then all I will say is that don't hesitate to reach out and speak to us. And that will be me.
Paku, thank you ever so much. Thanks for taking the time out. And I know you do a huge amount of work across the city and more widely. And I would just say that, actually reaching out to those hard to reach to communities and helping young people to find the appropriate pathways into work is so important for us as we create that fairness and equality across the city and the city region. So thank you for all the work that you're doing more generally, and I know that you're now doing a lot of work to support business, and that's to be celebrated, and I'm sure people will want to reach out. So thank you very much for that.
No worries at all.
I'm now going to introduce our next guest, Keltner Wolff, who's the Chief Executive of Be On Board. Keltner's spoken with us in the past, and it's always nice to have you back. And Keltner, thank you for the work you've been doing more recently to support Business West with looking at our board. And I'm going to hand over the floor to you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much to Business West Initiative for inviting me today. We've only got 5 minutes, so it's going to be a quick overview of Be On Board. But if there's time, I'm very happy to take questions after this, or you can always contact me through info@beonboard.co.uk. I'll start by telling you about Be On Board and what we do, and also what our offer to business is. So that's the next slide. I think somebody's controlling my slides. Is that right? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Libby. So we're going to quickly tell you about what we do on Be On Board, what our office is to businesses and members. So essentially what Be On Board is doing is we're helping organisations to deliver on their diversity and equality and inclusion priorities, to thrive and build a more inclusive economy by having leadership at the top from diverse backgrounds. So the next slide, it was a little bit about what we've been doing. So we've been around for over 3 years now, with the support of Business West Initiative. We've helped over 65 corporates and charities through their ED&I journey, and we've appointed diverse board members on some of those organisations. We've built a diverse talent pool of board-ready professional leaders. We have over 200 people now in our talent pool, people with all sorts of different skills and backgrounds. And we've delivered a major national event. It's a conference called Diverse Leadership Now. As well as that, to understand what is happening in businesses and to keep in touch with what do businesses need around ED&I, we launched a research project called Embracing Boardroom Diversity for Better Business Outcomes, which has given us a lot of intel into what business are doing around their ED&I agenda, but also what their needs might be in the future too. So that's been really useful. So all of these things to support businesses and organizations. So slide 4, we often think about, diversity as being something separate, but actually diversity, inclusion, equality sit at the very core of business, and it should be at the heart of business strategy. So I always like to say that what we do is we help organizations to reach their potential, to achieve their aspirations in a challenging and unpredictable business landscape. And the business landscape has been unpredictable for a long time, and that was pre-COVID. There were lots and lots of things happening. So for us, it's actually, we say ED&I is at the heart of this, helping organizations reaching their potential. So what happens post-COVID? Post-COVID, we need to accelerate our efforts. We know that we want to help organizations to re-emerge better and to thrive. A lot of things have happened. We're facing the most unprecedented challenges at the moment. And so in our next slide, what I want to say is that what is this challenge? The challenge to build this inclusive, resilient, and sustainable growth. Now, we've talked about green shoots, but we know we've got a long way to go yet. And actually, what we also know is that do we want to be what we were before? Can we be what we were before? Or should we be looking forward? And I really believe that we've got to look forward to what we can be, look forward to what the world needs now, you know, and we say, actually, building an inclusive, resilient, sustainable growth strategy is really critical. We've talked a lot about inclusion. Inclusion is really, really important. We talk about it a lot here, and we talk about it a lot in other areas. What does inclusion mean? It means building an economy that benefits all. And I really believe that the new world not only has a keen eye on businesses being authentic about their ED&I, but also authentic about their impact and social responsibility. And I really feel that the moral impetus for inclusion has become even more vital. We've seen that in the political things that have happened. We've seen that in the movements, but we know that the agenda has moved on, really. So building that inclusive sort of future is really important. And resilient, because we know what happens when we are not resilient. We've seen it. And of course, sustainable, to make sure that we are actually, we can be future proofed, and our strategies can be longer lasting. We believe that this all starts at the top. Having the right leadership in your boardrooms and in your organizations, that's where it starts. Leadership, the best leadership is key. What sort of leaders does this uncharted future need? We believe that leaders with diverse thinking, diverse approaches, diverse experience, and diverse skills. I say diverse a few times for a reason, because once again, I think people think of diversity as one thing, and then they talk about skills and perspectives. But actually, bringing those things together is absolutely critical. Homogeneous leadership is not going to cut it. And by that, I mean that we need people who have this diverse backgrounds, these connections with a wider talent pool that understands a diverse customer base, which is growing. And we need to leverage diversity, inclusion, and equality into every part of our organization to unlock this benefit that ED&I brings. It's what Andy has been talking about, it's what Poku has been talking about, and I'm talking about it from a leadership level. And this isn't a new theory. I talk a lot about what I believe. This isn't a new theory. We know in the next slide it shows, we know that, there's been so much research, global research, from McKinsey's, from the Parker Review, even British standards have evidenced this. Companies with diverse and inclusive leadership teams outperform those that are not. And outperforming means profitability, it means innovation, it means a diverse talent pool, it means sustainability, it means growth, and it means resilience. Those are all the things that we need. So what can Be On Board do to help you? In the next slide, we'll show you that we consider ourselves a one-stop shop to help you access these leaders and for you to get the best from unlocking diversity. So firstly, we help you invest in that talent, in that diverse talent, through our diverse leadership pool, who are all board ready, who are ready to step into leadership positions, and also through training and workshops. We help you to mainstream and embed your ED&I goals into your organization, to understand the critical relationship that exists between ED&I and business strategy, and to support your growth potential. So those are the two key things we do to land the aspirations that you have. So we can do this, and the next slide will show the challenge. We know we've got a challenge looming. We know that, and I think we're in this position where we can go back, we can stand still or move forward, or we can turn the conversation that we've been talking about in ED&I into real action. to bring real success for everyone in our city. So as I said, we've been talking about green shoots, we've been talking about ED&I, and what Be On Board will give you the opportunity to do is really support that change from your leadership and boardroom levels, so that you can make the, so that you can deliver on your mission and vision. So finally, how do you get hold of us? You can get hold of us through our website and so on, and learn more about how we can help you on your ED&I journey, starting at the very top.
Thank you very much for sharing that, and I think it really resonated and chimed with what we've been discussing today. We've got a few minutes before we get to the bottom half of the hour. If anybody has any questions or any points that they wanted to raise with the speakers or more generally. I did wonder, actually, there's a couple of people I know who've been on their own journeys as organisations. I think Nathan PC, you're on the call. I wondered actually if you'd given any thoughts, reflections from a law firm legal perspective, how you found that journey around bringing different people into your organisation.
Well, I think it's definitely a journey. Law firms are notoriously not as balanced in terms of diversity and inclusion, but it's something that we're taking really seriously, and we have a team that are working quite hard with ethnic communities to try and engage them, make them realise that this is a place that you can work and thrive, and that we are perhaps more inclusive and not as well, I suppose trying to instill ambition actually into communities, and that there are opportunities, and we have a number of great role models who are from ethnic backgrounds that are working really hard. So it is something that's really high up on our agenda. But I do welcome, initiatives that Poku was talking about as ways in which we can really practically engage. So I think that's I'd like to catch up with Poku about that after, actually. So I was going to message him. I've done it orally now. So yeah, Joanne, who's also on, I think, may have something to add because she sits on our D&I committee.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Joanne wanted to.
Yeah, I'm here. I can.
Hi.
Hi there. I think the important thing is it's about sort of getting people in, but it's a whole, it's what Calvin has just been talking about. It's about across the whole workforce. So just targeting one area or one initiative isn't going to work. And so it's a huge project for every organization. And I think sometimes, you put it in a project box, and actually this is not a project. This is just about people being themselves, things being accessible, creating an environment in which people can flourish. And so we're tackling it on multiple levels. Have we got more to do? Completely, all the time. I don't think we'll ever be there. And actually, Andy's video at the beginning pretty much speaks volumes, doesn't it, for both the people in your organization, but also the people you want to invite into your organization. And actually, that visual for me is probably the most powerful messaging that spans all of this diversity and inclusion we're talking about. So yeah, much more to do, and working in conjunction with this wider community is really important, not just for our office here, but for our business as a whole.
Yeah, I would just add that I agree about the video. I shared it during the session with a number of people in our organisation, because I think we can take a lot of inspiration from that visual. So.
Thank you very much, Joanne and Nathan, for thanks for coming in. I haven't seen anybody with their hands up, so I think what I'm going to do, I've noticed Guy Timpson has just left, but I was really delighted to see that the Balloon Fiesta appears to be going live over the summer. So the prospect of a summer with lots of balloons across the city, I think, is clearly a sign that hopefully better days are ahead of us. Could I just say a huge thank you to all of our speakers, Andy, Poku and Kalpna, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a really fascinating hour of time. To all of our members and guests, thank you very much for joining us. For those who want to stay on, we've got half an hour of more informal networking. Victoria, Nina and the team will host and organise that. And then we are back for our next meeting on the 3rd of June, same time, same place. And then, of course, in September, hopefully, we'll be meeting face to face. So thank you very much for everybody for today, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good day. Bye-bye.